So if everybody wants to take their seat here, and I said, you know, people came, what was it, 80 people for Chris Mooney last year for this kind of program, and they had to pay to come. So I guess I'm not as popular as Chris Mooney. I'm sorry.
Raise the price.
You people figure they hear me all the time, okay?
Yeah.
Then I'm not special because they hear me all the time.
Sure you are.
Better not leave
You're special, just like everyone else.
just like everybody. I'm special like everybody here.
How's your husband doing?
Okay, we are going to take this because then the people that aren't here, if they want to click in and hear it, they can, and it'll be on our, like the fundraising emails and that kind of stuff that people can click in and hear. So because I kind of didn't plan this far enough ahead of time, and also because if I tried to gotten a special speaker from CFI people have been terribly busy lately with conferences and reason rallies, and I doubt I could have gotten anybody anyway. So you just have to listen to me tonight, okay? So what?
You can be reasonable too.
So I'm kind of I'm calling it the State of the Center Address, and 5 years and counting. And so that's kind of where we're going to take off from on that. The lease for this center was officially began 5 years ago, April the 1st, 2007. However, we got the keys about a week or maybe between 2 and 1 week ahead of time. And Steve Dewar, Craig Gosling, and I went to work down here. The three of us, mostly. We had a little bit of help from some other people. It was mostly Steve, Craig, and I. And we went shopping and bought everything for the center. Everybody started spending their time working on it. And by the time other people got into the center, they were kind of surprised at how good it looked. I remember Margaret Swartz saying, well, I thought it'd just be a couple of card tables and chairs. And here it really looks like it's lived in. So those guys did miracles in about a week's time there. Steve made all the decisions on the technology, the computers and everything like that to buy. He made the beautiful CFI logo up here that you see in the reception area. I think Craig helped with that some too, but he and Craig together did that. Built tables, he built the countertops up in the office area, bookshelves, the library, and more, and this was all in about a 2-week period of time. And it was all up and running. It was amazing. I couldn't believe it. Craig is the one that had the idea for the picture gallery that we have in the reception area. He got all the pictures copied and hung, and it looked like we'd been here for a while. The bust of Darwin that you see as you come in, that I think was something Craig had already made. And the minute he walked in here and looked at this space and saw that little alcove, and he said, that's where my Darwin bust is going. So he got it coated, and Steve built the base for it. And so we have our Darwin bust right there as you walk in the door. So because of all their hard work, we hit the ground running on April the 1st. And although then we started having programs right away. But we took time planning for our actual grand opening conference, and we had that in September 23rd. And I know some of you here, a lot of you here, were at the grand opening conference. And we had a reception here at the center because I wanted people to see our center, but I was hoping there were more people coming than we could fit in here. And so we rented the theater over at the History Center right down the canal walk, and we had our program in the theater. We had lunch, and we had a banquet type dinner that evening in their cafeteria, and I think we came back over here for a reception, and that was a big day. I got the 4 speakers from CFI that I wanted. I got all of them. It was a virtual who's who of CFI at the time. Some of them are no longer with CFI, but they were at the time. It was Paul Kurtz, who was the founder and CEO of it, and I heard something, and I better turn my own cell phone off here before it goes off in the middle of my speech. I hate it when other people's go off and then I forget to turn my own off, so that's right. Tony Van Pelt at that time was the public policy director in DC, and she was here and spoke. Joe Nickel paranormal investigator extraordinaire, and if you know anything about Joe, he will talk to you for a day and ever, and you never get a break because he loves what he's doing. Eddie Tabash, civil rights attorney in Los Angeles, and he's the honorary chair of CFI West, now called CFI LA. And he's a member of the CFI Executive Board, and he's been a real advocate for us all the way along, and he's still on the board. I was talking to him at the Reason Rally, I was talking to him at the conference not too long ago, and he's really a promoter for us. Paul and Tony are no longer with CFI, but Joe and Eddie are still driving forces behind the organization. Too bad, though, you only got me tonight. All right, I did give a speech then, but I was not the headliner. But I'm going to give the speech that I gave 5 years ago, and then add some things to it. As I reread it a couple days ago when I was working on this, I want you to think about the same thing I did when I started rereading it, is how much has changed and maybe how much is still the same in the 5 years. Then I'll talk about the progress we've made in the 5 years that we've been at this location and our plans for the future. After my speech, you'll have time to do a few questions, so please hold your questions till I finish the speech. Following that, we're going to be recognizing our donors, our major donors. These will be the people that contributed $500 or more during 2011. And those are very important people because we couldn't have our place without those people. We'll make a toast to the future of CFI Indiana, and we'll celebrate with anniversary cake over there. So I'm going to start out with the speech I gave in September of 2007. And remember the speakers I mentioned, so I'm going to be referring to them in the speech probably. Okay, and I followed Eddie. Okay, and we've had Eddie here since. You know, Eddie's a really fiery speaker. Good afternoon. What a hard act to follow, Eddie. Thank you very much. Let's give Eddie and all the speakers for the day a round of applause. Well, you've heard from Paul telling about the new secularism and the agenda for the future. You've heard from Tony about her important work on Capitol Hill, and Joe on his work to try to help people think critically and examine all those fantastic claims that stimulate our imagination and tempt us to believe in the supernatural. Then Eddie has put the fear of God into you. Or at least the fear of God's warriors here on earth who claim to represent him. Or should we say her? All of this work is extremely important and worthy of your support. One of our members has said that CFI Transnational is our higher power. Now I want to draw your attention to and emphasize the importance of reaching out to the general public, the man on the street, the people at the crossroads of America. Not just in Indianapolis, but at the crossroads at all the crossroads where people meet. It is important that CFI Transnational is a think tank, as Paul likes to say. It is important that they publish scholarly magazines. It is important that they promote research into the holy books through the Jesus Project under Joe Hoffman, and study the Quran as Ibn Warwick does. It is important that Tony is in our nation's capital to extend the influence of Center for Inquiry to our nation's leaders. It is important that Austin Dacey represents CFI at the United Nations, where we have NGO status. It is important that there are national conferences with named speakers. It is important that there is the outreach to other countries, as Norm Allen does. And there are international conferences, such as the one coming up in Beijing, which was at that particular time going to happen. There's one in Australia, I believe, coming up now. It's an international conference. However, if we're going to promote science, reason, and freedom of inquiry to the general public, to the average voter, to those who elect our officials and shape the tone of our country's public opinion, we must continue to develop grassroots organizations such as communities and centers. In spite of what we sometimes think, it really is ultimately we the people who rule this country. The problem is, as Eddie so aptly pointed out, there is a very vocal, organized minority in this country who are having undue influence over public policies. Does that change? If we as free thinkers, secularists, secular humanists, are to make our voices heard, we too have to organize and support one another and network with the moderate religious people. One of the major attractions of religious institutions is that they satisfy an important basic need, that for love and belongingness, the need for community. Indianapolis native Kurt Vonnegut, in his book, Fate's Worse Than Death, recounts how his German ancestors immigrated to Indianapolis and formed free-thinking societies. His great-grandfather, Clemens Vonnegut, was a leader in this movement. After discussing some of the history of the freethinkers in Indianapolis, Kurt says, "If there were freethinker societies today, lonely rationalists, children of the Enlightenment, wouldn't have to consider throwing away their brains as though their heads were nothing but jack-o'-lanterns in their desperate search for spiritual companionship." That's in Kurt's book, Fate's Worse Than Death. At our center here in Indianapolis and others forming in Chicago and elsewhere, we strive to be that place where freethinkers, by whatever name they prefer, can find community. Since the founding of Humanist Friendship Group here in 1999, many of us have grown to be very close friends and support each other. We hope to bring more and more people into our community of caring individuals. Now that we have a home, we can better serve these human needs. The majority of religious organizations are not the ones at the extreme that we hear about all the times in the news. They are made up of good people who do good things. However, not everyone feels a need for religion in order to be a good person and do good things. We need to be that alternative. A month or so ago, I made a trip to the emergency room and missed some of our discussions at the center. It was such a great feeling to get the phone calls and emails from my CFI friends, inquiring about my well-being and expressing their support and concerns and offers to help. One person told me in the discussion group, they thought about praying for me, but they didn't think that would be appropriate. In light of the results of some of the recent prayer studies, I wanted to say, please don't. However, it is the human community, the caring spirit, the offer of solace and support to persons in time of crisis is what is the important thing. We don't have to invoke a deity. We can show that love and concern without that. There have been several times in the past 8 years, now 5 more since then, okay, when I said to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I spending my time organizing groups and programs? Why don't I just sit out on my couch in front of my TV or read a book and relax and enjoy myself instead of doing all this work? I think about that sometimes. Then I think how lonely and boring that would be. There would be no one to discuss these books with. No intellectual stimulation. No great discussions. I did not know there were so many smart people in Indiana until I started this group, and they just keep coming. I sometimes say, I just sit back and direct traffic and let other people talk. I have learned so much from the people who come to our discussions, and from the books, films, and speakers we have had. Everyone seems to have some special knowledge and insight to contribute. So 2 of the reasons to have a local center are socialization and education. A place where people can come together to form community and support each other and learn together. I recently began to write an essay which I titled, "The Day My Innocence Was Shattered." It was September the 11th, 2001. I was administering the Indiana State graduation qualifying exam to about 100 10th grade students. A proctor came into the room and whispered in my ear, "A plane has crashed into the World Trade Center in New York." "Don't say that too loudly," I whispered. "We don't want to get the students upset." It was almost noon when the test finished, and the materials and all the proper order were wheeled on the cart to my department head. "I heard a plane crash in the World Trade Center," I said. She was watching the coverage on TV. She said in a grave voice, "Reba, it's more than that. 2 planes hit the World Trade Center, and another crashed in Pennsylvania. They think it was on its way to target Washington, D.C. As I headed to my office to get my purse and head to lunch, because I was starving to death, as a matter of fact, was spending a morning with 100 10th graders, I was met by an assistant principal with a hysterical student. "Can you talk to this young lady, Miss Wooden?" he said. Her counselor's at lunch. The young lady was upset because she believed that the biblical prophecies were coming true and the world was going to end that day. After doing my best to calm and reassure her, and this was kind of hard with her being such a believer and me not being and not tipping my hand, I left her in the care of another person and finally headed to lunch. As I walked down the hall, TVs were on in every classroom, showing the news coverage of the tragedy. On the TV in the teacher's lounge, I heard President Bush responding. It may be a day or so later, but they kind of all ran together. The words seemed to be all militarism, patriotism, and religion. I was appalled by this, and even more appalled that the vocal among my colleagues were agreeing with him. A few days later, we were all asked to dress in red, white, and blue, and wear flag pins, and were given flags to display on our desks. During passing periods, patriotic military music was blaring on the intercom. The scene that kept flashing before my eyes was from the film version of the book, All Quiet on the Western Front, in which the German schoolmaster is expounding to his students on how they should leave school and go out and fight for the fatherland. Then came Friday, and a system-wide patriotic rally was planned for the stadium. I was certainly not going to the rally. I need to get away from this madness. Prior to this fateful day, I had recently been feeling very optimistic about the world and the possibility of world peace. Schools were emphasizing conflict resolution with students, trying to teach them to resolve conflicts without resorting to violence. Couldn't the nations of the world do this also? I had always, with a few exceptions, viewed my country as a peace-loving country, a civilized country, a leader in the world for peace, justice, and freedom. My innocence was shattered on September 11th, 2001, more by my country's reaction than by the terrorist attack itself. I had held my country to a higher standard, and my innocence was shattered by the reaction on that day by its leaders. I later wrote an essay titled, "Two Powerful Words, Religion and Patriotism." It began, "Two words that are extremely powerful, often misused, and when used in combination with each other are lethal, religion and patriotism." It seemed that after 9/11, the whole world went crazy. Talk of war, revenge, curtailing people's rights and liberties. To me, it brought home the necessity for people to be educated in history, religions, critical thinking and decision-making, so that they could make well-informed and reasoned decisions instead of following blindly where political leaders want to take them. Critical thinking skills are vital in every area of one's life. Having or not having these skills carries over into the making of personal decisions, business decisions in the workplace, political decisions in every phase of life. Critical thinkers are hard to manipulate. Einstein said the worst fault of the Germans was obedience. Einstein was always a questioner and a nonconformist. He would never have developed his theories of physics had he not questioned and accepted the theories of his day. He thought that imagination was more important than knowledge. A purpose of local CFI communities and centers is to educate and to promote critical thinking. We need to step out of our comfort zones and examine new ideas. If we're going to make our viewpoints known, we have to have an influence in the state, country, and the world. We must be vocal. We must write letters to the newspapers. We must write and call our elected representatives at every level. We must network and support other organizations who are working for our common goals. We must run for public office. James Dobson of the religious right has said that school board seats are more important than congressional seats. Here in Indiana, for example, we have, now this is 5 years ago, okay, we have a science curriculum which gets an A for its treatment of evolution. However, as recently as a couple years ago, and then of course we know again this year, a proposal was made in the legislature to give equal time to creationism, alias intelligent design. This time they didn't even use the alias. Science teachers are intimidated by students and parents who want religion, not real science, taught in the classroom. SJR 7 proposes an amendment to the Indiana State Constitution defining marriages between a man and a woman. There's already a state law with this definition. However, the religious right wants it written into the Constitution. This amendment passed both houses of the legislature 2 years ago. It was passed again this year by the House and was prevented only by a tie vote in the Senate Rules Committee from going to a vote of the Senate, where it would no doubt have passed. In Indiana, a constitutional amendment must pass 2 sessions of the legislature, and then it goes to a vote of the people. It will come back. We cannot count it out, and it has come back. Okay. There is an element in our legislature which every session writes bill after bill and tacks amendment after amendment onto other bills concerning human reproduction. Has that changed? No. They want to prevent students from getting factual scientific sex education in schools in favor of abstinence-only programs. They want to keep women from having the right to choose to end the pregnancy. And some of them to make access to any kind of birth control virtually impossible. Has it changed? No, maybe it's gotten worse. Indiana has a new In God We Trust license plate, which is a free alternative to the standard Indiana plate. It has special status over the other special plates from which persons can choose. CFI Indiana is selling license plate frames which say promote science and reason, and by the way, we still have some on left. So as a result, as an answer to the In God We Trust plate. ACLU of Indiana has filed a lawsuit challenging the favored status of this plate. John Keel and myself of CFI Indiana have agreed to be among the plaintiffs in this case. They lost the suit, by the way. 4 of our members, John Keel, Sean and Diane O'Brien, and Craig Gosling, were plaintiffs in the Freedom for Religion Foundation's case against the state of Indiana, challenging a paid chaplaincy position in the Social Services Division of the government. As a result of this challenge, the state has fired the chaplain. These are some of the issues here in our state, and we need to speak out on. Having our own location makes us more visible and taken more seriously. So, a third purpose of CFI communities is activism. Socializing, education, and activism form the 3 major purposes of CFI communities and centers. While doing an internship in the late 1980s, when I was working toward a master's degree in counseling, I had a client who'd been involved for several years with a very controlling fundamentalist cult that recruited on college campuses. As a result of taking classes in philosophy, science, social sciences, and so on, he had come to reject the teachings of this cult and decided to leave it. The first time I saw him, he was suicidal. He had lost all his friends and his belief system. He felt hopeless and helpless. He had questions about what he should do in the most common situations that involved making moral decisions. Individuals and society in general need an alternative to religion as a moral guide. Secular humanism offers that. It is a great moral life stance that makes it possible to live a fulfilling life without the reliance on a supernatural power or holy book. It is based on what Paul calls the common moral decencies, which have proven since the history of mankind to be essential to promoting peace and cooperation among people and allowing individuals to develop to their fullest potential. While one term we use is free thinkers, it does not mean that our location and programs are free and come without a financial price tag. If we are to keep our home, our center, we need your help. CFI Transnational has been supportive in letting us open, and there are donors who have stepped up in support of our Indiana Center. We had to come up with a certain amount of money before they would let us start, and some of you in here put up some of the initial money before they would even trust us with the lease, okay? And there's people sitting in here who were very influential in putting some money forward to do that back 5 years ago. We will need financial support from more of you to keep our new home. CFI Transnational expects us to support our center from resources within our own state. They are busy and obligated in funding the many other programs. And just to fund, and so they expect us to fund our own center. Okay, now that's the end of what I did last time. I probably went on about fundraising, but I'll cut that off there. So doesn't a lot of that sound familiar?
Doesn't change.
Doesn't a lot of it fit today's situation also? So what has changed? Well, for one thing, the walls are gone.
Yeah.
For you people who were not here the first year and a half, this was 3 rooms,
Right.
which made it a lot less usable than it is now, okay? We lived with that for about a year and a half. Then one morning, a crew of our volunteers came in wielding sledgehammers and knocked the walls out, okay? And we have some people sitting in here now who were there knocking walls out. One was Steve Dewar. I saw Mark Merchant come in. Mark was here. Craig was here. Let's see, maybe nobody else is here who was there that day, but there were several other people, Tim Gilliam and Joe Oliver, and I can't remember everybody I know. Ryan Edmondson was another one, and Mark was here that day, I know, back there. So it was, I couldn't believe it. By noon, I think they had all the walls knocked out, and the whole floor was covered with trash, and by the time they hauled all the they had to wheelbarrow all the debris out to the back and up the elevator and dump it in a trailer that Kim Gilliam brought in to haul it off. And then I looked at this carpet and I thought, we'll never see the carpet again. And I think it's Mark that did most of that work. He gets the sweeper out and Mark's going and going and going. Finally, we found there's a carpet stall under there, right, Mark? So that was quite a day. We ate lunch outside. We ordered pizza because you couldn't sit in here. But it was all knocked out. And then, of course, it had to be put back together. And I think every wall they took out had electricity in it.
Oh.
So there was a lot of rewiring to do. Ryan Edmondson did the bulk of that, rerouting it. We had to get a licensed electrician to inspect and sign off, but Ryan did most of the really work on that. Steve Dewar did probably the bulk of, I'm sure, the bulk of the work of putting back what had to be put back, which was mainly just one wall, right? And then patching up other places. It was more tear out than it was put back, but Steve took the responsibility for that. Steve took a lot of the responsibility for planning on how we did it, too, at that point. But it took a crew to knock it out, and I was amazed at what they did. I think they kind of had fun with it. Oh, John Keel was one of them, too. You know, John swinging a sledgehammer, knocking stuff out. Joe brought his teenage daughter, even. Kate was helping, Caitlin. What difference that has made in making this space fit our needs. If you can imagine, if you weren't here before, hallway through here, the office went out to where the carpet's patched, a narrow room over there. This was 2 rooms with a like a French door between it.
Yeah.
So I mean, we existed, but this is so much better. Also, before we opened the center, we probably barely had 50 Friends of the Center. They had just kind of started that program, and we were called a CFI community, and I think at that point people didn't really see a purpose to paying a Friend of the Center membership because we didn't have that many expenses. Then once you get a place and you really have rent and all this, there's more of an incentive to tell people, you know, and they feel more need to do it. The last report I got from CFI said we had 284, and that's not counting more than 1 per family in it. I still haven't gone through it with a fine-tooth comb. There may be some duplicates and things, but it's probably not that far off, right? And particularly if you count it the way I'd like to count it, with 2 per family, it's probably accurate at least, all right? Maybe more so. The list of guest speakers that we've had over the 5 years is extensive, and I passed out a page there that with a list of just what we had in 2011. If you didn't get one, I have some you can get later. It's on the web page. It's also the 5 for 5 email that I sent out. There's a link to it in there. You can click and see it. Kind of amazed me when I actually started going back through the calendar and listing what we had actually had. The full day conference we've hosted conferences. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 Darwin Day all day conferences. We had an all day Darwin Day conference. I mean, not this year, but in the past. We had an all day Religion Under Examination conference. This year we had our Civic Day, was our big all day. Our Cafe Inquiry program has brought in awesome speakers. We built real community through our weekly coffee and conversation and other discussions. I think that kind of does, almost more than anything, the community-wise, people just like to come in and talk. And then, of course, all of our other programs that generate a lot of discussion. It's just amazing. And this is all possible because of volunteers who plan these programs and come and participate, etc. I considered our Indiana Civic Day at the State House as a real high point in advocacy this year because, and I couldn't say it real publicly at the time because of the other organizations that were cooperating with us might have been offended because a lot of those people were progressive religious people, our friends among the progressive religious community. But I wanted to say, first time there's been that many atheists in the State House at the same time. Or that, and some people like to call us an atheist organization, actually had a program at the Indiana State House, right? I really felt good about that. Also, the advocacy we did this year against the Creation Science Bill and other things, I went over and testified. Susan was recording it. We got it posted out because Susan was taking her what, iPhone is that what it is? Yeah. And, you know, there's a live feed from the State House, so if you really want to keep up on what's going on, you can watch all the committee hearings, you can watch all of the proceedings in the House and the Senate online from the State General Assembly website. She was recording off of it, which allowed us to then post it out on Facebook and other places, and it got a lot more visibility. Steve also helped with that in the last one when I testified on the voucher bill. Steve recorded that one. So we can post that out, and also Steve's been recording several of our other programs, which allows people who maybe can't make it to the programs. Like tonight, we're recording this, at least my speech. We're not going to record the rest of it, but the speech part, so that people who can't come, and also if we keep spreading it out on Facebook, you know, the social media is a tremendous way to get the word out. At the international level, the recent Reason Rally. And Susan was at anybody besides Susan and I who are here tonight who were there? Oh, Mark, yeah, Mark Oliver was there. There were 255 passenger buses left from the bus station down here. And Susan was on one of them. I think Mark was on the other one, and some of our other members. But there were a lot of people I know that were on those buses that I don't know, which is fantastic. There's that many people in Indiana that I don't even know that go to this rally, and it was tremendous. So if you want to talk about it a little more later, if you want to ask Susan about it, or myself, or Mark, we were there. It rained was the bad downside, but other than that, the official estimate, I think, the one they have on the Reason Rally website is 20,000, which was by the Parks Department, who they say is used to estimating how many people are there in the mall at the different rallies. I think it would have been very hard to get an accurate count because, especially with the rain, some people probably came late, some people left early, some people were hiding under their umbrellas, some people were back in the tents. So I don't know whether that's accurate or not. I heard everything from 10 to 30,000, but what they have on their website now is 20,000. So it was impressive. And there's a lot of video and things out there. They're going to be releasing a whole DVD set of the whole rally, all the speakers that will be available for purchase, I think. It's not out there yet, but it will be. I'll put a link in our stuff when it comes out. So that was very impressive. And as many of the speakers there kept saying over and over, I think our time has come. People not affiliated with any religion are the fastest growing demographic in religious surveys. A lot of the other categories are losing people. We're gaining. It doesn't mean all those people are atheists. If you actually ask them, they won't identify as atheists. But Richard Dawkins, in his speech, I think in his speech at the rally too, but at least at the speech at the CFI reception the night before, there was a reception at CFI DC the night before. They did a survey they gave in England, and I don't remember all these statistics, but if you just ask people, you know, if you're an atheist or whatever, not too many of them will identify as an atheist. But if you ask leading questions like, how often do you go to church? Do you believe this, this, or this? There's very low percent who really believe all the stuff they probably say they believe. And if they ask them, well, then why did you mark Christian? If you don't even know the books of the Bible, you don't know what's in it, you don't know this. They said, because I want to be seen as a good person. Okay, so as far as actually believing the theology or even understanding the theology, I mean, that was in Britain, but it's probably not a whole lot different here either. A lot of people that go to church don't really understand what they're doing. So it's really probably higher, okay, that aren't really devout religious people if you really knew it. So, you know, these people are maybe leaving religion, and we need to be there for them. And I know we have people come in here all the time who are maybe recently leaving religion. They're looking for some group to affiliate with. When we had our billboards up, we got a lot of phone calls, we got a lot of sign-ups, we got a lot of people walking in here who were so glad to find us. And speaking of billboards, we have our billboard, just like that, is going to go up north of Bloomington in about 2 weeks. And I was going to keep it until it went up, but it got leaked to the press, and I got interviewed last week, so it's on the Bloomington radio station already, so it's no longer a secret. A lady in Bloomington was upset because of seeing all these repent, go to hell type billboards. And so she wanted to put up a quote atheist billboard. So she started a buzz on an email list with some of the Bloomington people, and I happened to be on that list. And so I was in Florida when this buzz started happening, and I didn't have access really to a computer. I was just getting on BlackBerry. But they were talking about what message they wanted on it, how they're going to get it printed, how they're going to get it drawn up. So as soon as I got home, I emailed her and I said, look, CFI already has a billboard. You know, we have all the artwork done. We have everything. And a lot of things you're talking about are the same, have the same message. I said, you know, we will gladly let you use our billboard. I mean, CFI will let any, you know, not just anybody, but, you know, if somebody wants to pay the rent, you know, she was going to pay, she's paying the rent out of her own pocket. Her name is Kimberly McKay, and she wants her name out there. Right? Oh. So she is paying the rent on the billboard for a month herself. And so this, you know, I said, hey, you know, if you're paying the rent, and she did all the legwork on contacting the billboard companies. Olympus turned her down, they wouldn't put it up. Back a few years, I told her, I said, good luck, because a few years ago, the Atheist Bus Campaign were told that Lamar owned all the billboards in Bloomington, and they wouldn't put it up. So but the location she wanted, it was Olympus or Lamar. Well, Olympus turned her down, she went to Lamar, I said, good luck. Well, Lamar's putting it up. Their only worry seemed to be that they didn't want it to look like it was their message. Now, do they worry about that with every billboard they put? So they first said, well, they wouldn't put it up unless it had on it, paid for by Kimberly McKay. Okay. Well, the problem with that is that we don't want our artwork altered, okay? Part of our thing is, you know, it's got to be exactly the way it is. It can't be altered. I said, so I end up talking to the guy at Lamar, and I said, well, you know, we won't want our artwork altered. You can't put it on the sign. You can put it on a plaque under it, but you can't put it on the sign. But I said, I'll tell you what, how about, I said, it's got CFI written all over it. How about if she donates the money to CFI and then we pay for it? And CFI takes the blame, right? It's sponsored by CFI, right? And I said, I'd already told her, you know, I'd take press calls and everything. So the guy at Lamar said, oh, I'll see, I'll talk to my manager. So then he came back and he said, yeah, that's okay, we'll just let it be CFI's responsibility. She doesn't even have to run the money through you. She can sign the contract and pay for it. But it has a website that links to CFI. It has a big CFI logo on it, so it's CFI's billboard. Okay, she's just paying for it. So it's close to Miles Furniture, I think, and it's supposed to go up about the 15th or 16th. So that way we should get some spin out of that too, I think, with it going up. So that's pretty exciting. Several of the people at the Reason Rally, the speakers, and then Ron Lindsay, I think, wrote, Ron Lindsay, if you don't know, is the CEO of CFI now, wrote a blog about it that consider this the new age of enlightenment, and they're touting the Reason Rally as a kickoff to the new enlightenment and an emphasis for us to move on. And it was very impressive to see the people up there, and particularly to see that probably the big majority of the people there were college students and young people, which is great. So all of you here at CFI have been pioneers in this movement. only the brave people like you have the courage to lead the charge, to be part of the minority. So there's a lot of people, I think, they don't want to be in the minority. Okay? Once we become the majority, they'll flock to us. But it takes the courageous people to stick their neck out there in the first place. Soon there'll be a critical mass. They use the term critical mass a lot up at the Reason Rally too. And others who are not courageous enough to be in the minority will move our way, and we will become the majority. And then I thought I would read they had all this entertainment. Okay, they had lots of entertainment. It started at 10 o'clock, and it was supposed to end at 6, but it was still going after 6 because they had all this entertainment and speakers constantly from 10 o'clock till close. And the organizations that sponsored it, which was quite a long list, it was virtually every atheist, agnostic, humanist, whatever organization in the United States and even beyond that were sponsors, and they were each given like 3 or 4 minutes to have one speaker. Right? So Ron Lindsay was the one who gave, our CEO, gave the speech, and this is Ron's speech. Now, he published it in his blog, but he said, I ad-libbed some, so it may be not exactly the same, but this was his printed speech. And you can kind of tell he got lots of cheers at various points. There were a lot of CFI people in the audience. It was late in the day. It was supposed to go on at 4, and I think it was 4:30. The rain was building up harder, and the downpour was just coming and people were scurrying out of there for shelter and everything about the time Ron was giving his speech. But so it's not very long. He couldn't have very much, okay? So this was his speech. It's fantastic to see all of you here at the largest gathering of atheists and other non-religious in the United States history. Paul, and that was the guy who was emceeing, okay, who introduced him. As Paul indicated, I'm the president of Center for Inquiry, or CFI. But I'm not going to talk too much about CFI because we have a whole bunch of information about CFI in our exhibit tent, such as pamphlets, brochures, bumper stickers, and knowledgeable staff who can give you details about CFI initiatives and programs. Please visit our exhibit tent if you haven't done so already. All the organizations had exhibits up there. CFI carries out its work in a number of different areas. We have community groups, campus groups, educational programs, including online courses, and a summer camp, publications such as Free Inquiry. We're also involved in litigation and lobbying. CFI is the Amazon of the free thought movement. We promote science and secularism in almost every conceivable way, and that is true. CFI is a broader organization than some of the others. Everybody kind of has their niche and so on, but I think, he's right that CFI has the broader outreach. We're able to engage in this wide range of activities because we have staff and volunteers who are driven to bring about a United States where science, reason, and secular values prevail. And I think this is a goal you share, am I right? In fact, I think you share most of CFI's objectives. Maybe that sounds presumptuous, but I think it's true. And if I outline CFI's objectives, you can tell me whether they're correct. Unless I'm mistaken, most of you want atheists everywhere to be able to come out in the open, state what they believe or don't believe without any fear of reprisal or discrimination. Am I right? That's what you want, and CFI is working toward that objective. And you got big cheers there, okay? Unless I'm mistaken, most of you don't want the government endorsing religious beliefs, placing crosses or Ten Commandments monuments on public land or in courthouses, requiring our children to solemnly affirm this as a nation under God. You want a government that is neutral on religious matters. You want a government that respects the beliefs of everyone. That's what you want, and CFI is working toward that objective. Unless I'm mistaken, most of you want government to stop giving religious institutions special privileges. We shouldn't be providing religious institutions with billions of dollars of public funding for faith-based programs. If it's a program based on faith instead of reasons, it is not right. It has no right to a penny from the public purse. The funneling of public money to religious institutions needs to stop. That's what we want, and CFI is working toward that objective. Unless I'm mistaken, most of you don't want religious doctrines influencing our laws and public policy. Religious doctrine has no place in public policy debates about reproductive rights, rights for gays and lesbians, including same-sex marriage, stem cell research, or other issues. Everyone has a right to believe in what they want to believe. People have a First Amendment right to believe in invisible spirits. They don't have a right to impose on others the instructions that these invisible spirits whisper to them. We want to keep religion out of our laws and public places, public policies. That's what you want, and CFI is working toward that objective. And with your support, working together, we can and will achieve our objectives. Thanks again for coming out and joining us today. I look forward to working with you in the future. So that was Ron's speech up there. Okay, I think that's where it was. Okay, so that's kind of where I was going to end the speech, I think. And then I've sent out some emails about the 5 for 5. I thought that was maybe a good slogan. We're 50-year anniversary, and encourage you if you can during this campaign. And kind of like the public radio always says, if you give a lot of money now, you won't have to listen to me the rest of the year. But
you learned that trick.
And so there's different ways. You can do 5 for 5. If you go online, you can pay your membership for $5 a month if you need to do that because of your finances. And I know some people have told me that, well, we were going to do it 5 for 5, and then we decided, well, gosh, 5, that's kind of chintzy. We could at least do 10. Or maybe we could do 15 or 20 if we're doing it by the month. And so, if you do 10 a month, that's $120 a year, right? A membership is $60. So, memberships are important, but memberships alone don't pay the bills. We have to have more than that unless we had a lot more members, all right? So the people that give over and above the memberships have really carried us. I mean, everybody's contribution, if it's $5 or $10 or whatever it is important, and they all add up. But we've had to have some bigger donors to carry the weight on this. And those are the people that I want to honor now, and I know several of them are not here, but I'm going to call their names anyway unless they requested not to be named. And the people who are here, I'd like for you to come up, and I have a certificate for you. And if you could stay up here maybe till I'm going to do it in 2 groups. And Nathan has my camera back there, so he's going to try to get some pictures while you're up here. So I have the certificate